Is it time to finally start worrying about Kristaps Porzingis and his injury concerns since he's returned to the Boston Celtics roster in late November? Obviously, we know that he left the Christmas Day game with an ankle injury he sustained in the first quarter. Sometimes he can start to push through, but after this one, they ended up ruling him out by halftime, and this is not the first time it has happened throughout this season. So when should Celtics fans finally say, uh-oh, about KP? We're going to break that down here on Celtics Today by Chat Sports. I am your host, Allie Barefoot. I have a good little prize picks question for you guys here. I'll talk to you guys about that a little bit later in this show. Will KP play 30 games this season? Type O for under, type O for over, type U for under. Let me know what you think about KP's possible games played this year, which, believe it or not, 30 is probably a pretty fair line to set it at. The reason why I say that is because he's already ruled as questionable for the Boston Celtics next game, and that was because of the injury issue that he did sustain versus the 76ers, which the Celtics went on to lose by 4 on Christmas Day, making this the first team to lose back-to-back games this season, which is extremely unfortunate for Boston because we very rarely lost games last year. And then they lost to the Bulls on Thursday. They beat them in an ass-whooping on Saturday, lost to the Magic Monday, and then lost to the 76ers on Wednesday. It's just starting to cause a little bit of concern. I think KP is at the forefront of that concern because we already know Porzingis has left 3 games with an injury out of the 11 that he has played so far this season since he returned from injury in late November. He's already missed the first month and a half of the NBA season. Now he's coming back, and he has left for an ankle injury every single time. You have to keep in mind, he also already had a foot surgery on that injury he sustained back in June during the NBA Finals. So he's got a lot of lower body issues we're going to have to keep in mind moving forward. But then I'm starting to realize, the Boston Celtics are starting to feel the Kristaps Porzingis effect. There's a reason why Kristaps Porzingis has not been the star that we have seen him be for other teams. And I'm going to talk about what he did for the New York Knicks and what he did for the Dallas Mavericks and then the Washington Wizards here. Because Kristaps Porzingis, we knew that when we took him on, he was a little bit of an injury plague, which is extremely unfortunate because he's so good at playing basketball. He is a difference maker for the Boston Celtics. So when you've got somebody like KP that is unfortunately made of glass, that's where it starts to get a little bit tricky because you don't know what you can do with him. You don't know what his limitations are, and you want to rely on him, but you just don't know if it's worth it because you're going to put all of your eggs in his basket and then have him eventually end up getting injured, and it just keeps going downhill from there. He played in New York as he was entering into the NBA. 2015 to 16, he played 72 games. That's phenomenal for Kristaps Porzingis. 2016 to 17, 66 games played. All right, now we're going down a little bit. And then we're going down even more with 48 games played. And the rest was kind of the same in Dallas/Washington when he was traded by the deadline in 2021. 57. Okay, I'll take 57 games. Then 43. Then 34. Then 17. And then a whopping 65 games played, which was the last season he played before coming to Boston. So this was the year that Brad Stevens finally looked at Porzingis and said, damn, he can play 65 games. We know now, moving forward, that he can play at least 50 for us, and we can work around him. But then you haven't really gotten that. Yes, you did see him play 57 games last year because we knew we did not play him back-to-back, nor did we play Al Horford back-to-back. We certainly did not play Kristaps Porzingis in 3 consecutive ball games because that was just too much on him. He very rarely played more than 35 minutes a game. Now he's played 11, technically 14, but he's left 3 of those games with an injury, and now we have 11 throughout this season, which is starting to put a big fat question mark on the future in his time in Boston. So my question here for you guys is, knowing that Porzingis hasn't been extended, he's the only player in the starting 5 that has not been extended past 2026. Should Boston extend KP? Or are we now looking at the effect that he's had on other teams where he's phenomenal in the first year and then it starts to go downhill? Type Y for yes, type N for no in the comment section. Let me know what you guys are thinking of right now about whether or not you think KP would be worth to keep in Boston and pay him that much money for a guy that you really cannot play back-to-back. And it's hard to rely on a guy that you can't play back-to-back. That's why Jason Tatum's been so reliable throughout his time in the NBA, is because Tatum very rarely sits out. But when you sign Porzingis, you're also signing his injuries as well. So put it in the comment section down below. And I do think that Celtics fans, they knew this when Porzingis was coming into Boston. They knew that he is injury prone. The reason why he's the unicorn is because what he does is so outlandish. It's so rare that you are going to have complications that come with that. And this is something Boston needs to get used to. We do not need to expect more than 57 games this season. He barely had 57 games last year. We need to start expecting 57 games the first year he played, maybe 34, maybe 32 the next year. I think it's just going to start to go downhill from there. But what does this mean for Boston moving forward, who's trying to go back-to-back? Is this a game changer? Is this going to be an end-all, be-all? Don't trust Porzingis anymore? We're going to break that down here in the back half of the show. Before I do that, I do want to go on ahead and ask you guys to download Prize Picks. It is the #1 daily fantasy sports app in America for a very good reason. And right now, all you guys have to do is just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. And they do now offer MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. So obviously, the basketball season is in full effect, but it's also football. You got college and professional. You also have hockey, as well as, Call of Duty for all those gamers out there. So for today's lineup, I do have Darius Garland to have more than 1.5 rebounds, and Kevin Durant to have more than 10.5 rebounds and assists. As you can see, Darius Garland, obviously, it's a little bit of an easier pick. That's why it's a goblin. Just doesn't pay as much. But if there was a red guy next to him, that'd be a demon. And it's a harder pick, but the payout is a lot more. Go on ahead and download the app today. Use code CLNS to get you guys $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Can the injuries be avoidable? When you look at a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, knowing that he's 7'3", obviously he's going to move a little bit lankier than most players because he doesn't have the size that Jason Tatum had. He doesn't have that weight because his body isn't formed like that. And when you watch these injuries, they're just mere ankle rolls. They're just quick breaks. And it really sucks because when you ask that question, my answer is no. These injuries cannot be avoidable because it's just how the game is played. You're going to go up for a rebound. You're going to come down a little bit awkwardly. You're going to go try to do a jab step. You're going to end up tweaking your ankle, maybe even a crossover, a step back. That ankle gets tweaked again. You step on somebody's foot. It's very hard to avoid the injuries that Porzingis is getting. It's not lack of physical therapy. The training staff is phenomenal. It's not that Porzingis came back too early. It's just because of this. This is what happened in the 76ers Christmas game. He just started to go forward, and his ankle bucked. It's unfortunate, but this is what happens when you do a step back and you're moving a little bit too quick. You can see his ankle right there on the three-point line. It just kind of turned the wrong way, which can happen to anybody. But since Porzingis has had a history of injuries, he was ruled out at halftime because this is something that causes for concern. And that's where it starts to make me a little bit weary moving forward of how much can you trust Porzingis, because this is a cause for concern. This is something that if it happens to any other player, they're probably going to play through it. But because it's Porzingis, now you have to take him out. That happened in the first quarter of the game. On Christmas, on national television, now you have to completely adjust mid-game to your starting center no longer being there for Boston. How reliable can Porzingis be for the rest of the year? Especially when you can't play him back-to-back. Definitely not 3 consecutive nights. And if you do trust him to start and play the game, how many minutes is he going to give you before he has to go to the locker room and you can't play him anymore? And perhaps that's Horford's rest night. Well, now you've got Kata and Luke Cornett playing against the 76ers on Christmas, which is fine, but that's not a playoff center. That's not a game-winning center. I don't know how much longer you can trust Porzingis with putting him in the starting lineup and putting him in reliable minutes against a especially an in-conference competitor. And I do think that once Porzingis is ruled out of the ballgame, it's going to mess with the other players' mental. I don't know this. I'm not one of the players. But now Jason Tatum has to take more shots because Porzingis isn't out anymore. That lob they always have to KP in the center because you know the 7'3" Latvian is going to be able to get ready, get open, and put a nice little post shot up. That shot's gone now. So now the offense has to adjust on who can I get open? How many times do I have to cut? Am I going to have to guard Joel Embiid down low because Porzingis can? Am I going to have to double team him now because we don't have that height down low? These are all in-game adjustments that the Celtics now have to have when Porzingis is ruled out for the second half, and you're trying to win on national television. That can be daunting for a team. And then when you look at the starting lineup, like I said, with Porzingis, who is finally back in the starting rotation sometimes, the notable starting five of KP, Brown, Tatum, and Holiday and White, they have a -4 net rating in 85 minutes together. This was the phenomenal five last year that was +11 in 623 minutes together. But they also played every other game together, if not every game. Now, they've had to go a month and a half without Porzingis. Now that he's back, you've had a couple other injuries. This team hasn't really been able to mesh the same way they did last year because of Porzingis injuries, keeping them in and out of ball games. So I think that just because they don't have that playing time together like they did last year, they're not meshing well together, which is causing inconsistencies, which is causing the turnovers, the 19 turnovers against the Orlando Magic in Monday's loss. They're not the same team they were last year. We knew they weren't going to be, but with all the factors of the injuries, not just Porzingis's, it's not allowing Boston to have that same rhythm that they had last year. And like I said, it's not just Porzingis. If he was the only one out, Celtics can deal with that. But they've had to try to deal with several different players that have dealt with injuries throughout the first 25 games of the season. Sam Hauser, he's had a lot of back soreness. He was out the first 3 games, and now it's still lingering. So you can't have your reliable wing coming off the bench. Drew Holiday, he's missed consecutive games with a shoulder injury, which is never fun. And he also has been a shell of himself. Holiday, he's had foot injuries, ankle injuries, hamstring tightness. So now, that's White. So now that you've got other injuries to factor in, you don't know who's going to be healthy in which game, which causes a lot of inconsistent play, a lot of questions for concern. There's just so many factors going into this that it's not all on KP's plate, but something needs to be adjusted moving forward. My last question for you guys here, are you worried about the Celtics injuries? Scale it 1 through 10. Let me know in the comment section down below. 1, not at all. 10, cancel the season. It's too scary. And while you guys are at it, go on ahead and hit that sub button for me if you guys do love the Boston Celtics and you want the latest injury news and rumors on today's show. All you guys have to do is subscribe.